Hi, my name is Daren Jackson. I'm an assistant research scientist in the Department of Neurology at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health in Madison. I'm part of a group of researchers who have an article in the upcoming March issue of Developmental Medicine and Child Neurology. The lead author is Natalie Walker, and the title of the article is Lower IQ in Children with Epilepsy Due to Lower Parental IQ, a controlled comparison study. Now, what's previously known is that although children with idiopathic epilepsy tend to have IQs in the normal range, those IQs do tend to be significantly lower than healthy comparison control children. However, this is the first study to use parent IQ to examine familial differences among children with epilepsy and healthy participants. Basically, what we found is that lower IQ in children with epilepsy is not associated with lower parent IQ. Our participants were 97 children with either idiopathic generalized epilepsy or localization-related epilepsy, and 69 healthy control children. Each child came in with either their mother or father, and we collected 2 subtest Wechsler Abbreviated Scale of Intelligence, WASI, data from the parent, and 4 subtest WASI data from each child. In terms of demographics, we found no differences in age between the children in the epilepsy and the comparison group, nor were there differences in gender distribution across groups in either the children or the parents. We also found no difference in parent education across the 2 groups, that is, percentage of parents with some college education versus parents with a high school diploma or less education. If you have the paper in front of you, if you look at figure 1, you can see that children with epilepsy did indeed have IQ within the normal range, but those IQ scores also were significantly different from healthy comparison control children. You can also see that parent IQ across the 2 groups was not significantly different. That is, parents of children with epilepsy had equivalent IQs to parents of healthy comparison control children. Also, children with epilepsy had significantly lower IQs than their parents, and that was not true of the control group. Finally, we computed what we've called an IQ difference metric. That is, we subtracted the IQ of each child from the IQ of their parent. And we found significant differences across the groups in that IQ difference measure. We also compared children with and without attention deficit disorder. And the reason we did this was to make sure that this wasn't a confound that was affecting our IQ results. We found no differences in parent-child IQ difference score in participants with epilepsy with and without ADHD. And we also did not find any relationship between clinical epilepsy variables and this IQ difference score. So these were measures such as age at epilepsy onset, type of syndrome, LRE versus IgE, or number of current anti-epileptic medications. We think these findings are important for several reasons. First, this impact of epilepsy on IQ is present early in the course of the disorder. These were children with new or recent onset epilepsy. That is, they were tested within 6 months of their first reported seizure. So we can be reasonably certain that the difference in IQ score between children with epilepsy and controls is not due to the effects of recurrent seizures. Also, it's the first study to look at parental IQ. And so we've been able to show that lower IQ in children with idiopathic epilepsy is not due to clustering of cognitive impairment in families where epilepsy is present. Finally, the nature of the IQ test that we used here allowed us to administer the same subtests and even the same stimulus items to children and their parents. Thus, it's a direct comparison of overall intellectual ability that's not confounded by use of different tests or different stimulus materials. We hope in the future to re-administer these tests so that we can actually look at these data longitudinally and look at the developmental trajectory of epilepsy and its treatment in intellectual status. There are, of course, several limitations to the study. We only looked at intelligence. In the future, we hope to look at other cognitive domains that might be informative. Also, we didn't have appropriate sample sizes to look at differences across specific epilepsy syndromes, for example, childhood or juvenile absence, temporal lobe epilepsy, etc. For the most part, mothers were represented, so only between 20 and 25% across the two groups had fathers that brought their children in. So in the best of all worlds, we would have a 50-50 split with mothers and fathers coming in. In conclusion, we think that this study, along with previous research examining genetic contributions to IQ, provides evidence that lower IQ in children with epilepsy is not likely to be a direct effect of parent IQ or of clustering of cognitive dysfunction in families in which epilepsy is present. If you have any questions about the paper, please contact me. My email is jackson@neurology.wisc.edu. And I hope that this podcast will encourage you to take a look at the paper. If you have questions or comments, please get a hold of me. Thank you very much.